Good day wherever you may be. Welcome to Observations. We have Scott and Kirk, and I am Craig. We're here with you today. And this week, fellas, I was doing something I do a little less of these days. I'm no longer doing Shattering Myths, where I would read 12 newspapers a day to keep up with the news. But I was reading the newspaper this morning, and it was talking about abortion. And it said something about abortion that I have long thought was true, which is the preoccupation with among Pauline Christians to criminalize abortion is an utter waste of time. It will have absolutely no effect. Do you know that there are some 70 countries in the world where abortion is still a crime? And you know what the abortion rate is per percentage of women who are of a childbearing age, and the countries where abortion is legal and where it is illegal, and how much they differ?
Probably not a whole lot.
It's 4% of the, in countries where abortion is legal, 4% of women of childbearing age have an abortion. And in the 70 countries where abortion is a crime, 4% of women of childbearing age have an abortion. And it's been the case now for several decades. There is absolutely no effect of criminalizing abortion.
Except you kill a lot of mothers.
Yeah, except you have more people in jail, more, and you kill a lot of mothers. Yeah. Now, I don't think there's any moral individual that is a proponent of abortion, and I'm not. My point was that there is no benefit whatsoever of criminalizing abortion. There's something to be lost and nothing to be gained. That is not to say that abortion is anything other than horrible. Now, the other thing, in reading that article, it talked about the number of abortions that take place each year around the world. And the number currently is 60 million a year. That means that since abortion has been legalized, we've been tracking the numbers. You know, when it's criminalized, it's hard to know how many abortions take place because obviously people want to keep quiet about it. But now that it is legal in most countries, that since it's been legalized, there have been over 4 billion fetuses aborted. 4 billion souls. And that's just a staggering number, isn't it? That is more than half of the Earth's population has been aborted. And that is just sobering. And it's all because of sex being recreational and typically irresponsible. And of the people who are engaged in it not being prepared or willing to act as parents. On a also deadly note, but not so immoral, we're on the cusp of eradicating one of the most important insects on planet Earth. Over the last decade or so, we have lost more than half of the worldwide bee population. This past year alone, 40% more of the bee population was eradicated. Now, it's a combination of factors. It's part of it's insecticides, man-made. Part of it is a degradation of their food supply because we're gobbling up real estate, and it's hard for a bee to find nectar in a parking lot for a mall. And part of it is that that the conditions which have led to deteriorating health and nutrition of the bee have made them ever more susceptible to a parasite. It's kind of like the bubonic plague. The bubonic plague has that disease has been readily available. It is today. It was before the plague spread through Europe. It's just that it became deadly when, in terms of became a plague, when Europe was malnourished during the imposition of the Holy Roman Empire, and that's when it became so pandemic. Same thing's true with the bees. We have deprived them of habitat and food, which makes them susceptible to a parasite. But you know that 1 out of every 3 bites that we consume every day of food is directly produced because of bees pollinating trees and fields.
I've heard quite a bit about it. It seems to be, and of course, you know, our friends in Australia also, he's a beekeeper, and he talks a lot about the why it's dying there too.
Pesticides, parasite, and a lack of nutrition, I think, are the big 3, right?
But also, you know, they actually send trucks with beekeepers now, or have these large trucks filled with bees, and they have to go to the farm areas and they rent them.
Right. Oh yeah, there is my grandson-in-law, my son's brother-in-law, is a large apple orchard farmer. And it got so bad that about 5 or 6 years ago, they had to rent trucks filled with bees to pollinate their orchards. Otherwise, they'd have no crop. Yeah, that's how bad it is. But we really are in a fix on this one.
Well, didn't you tell me that, or us, that there's this big sludge over in the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean down towards South America?
Yeah, we have 2 problems in the Atlantic between South America and Africa. Now, it's a region that almost no one travels. There aren't any air flights over it. There aren't any shipping lanes through it. But there is an area where the magnetic poles of the Earth have reversed. Now, that's a huge problem. Now, it's something that has happened many, many times in Earth's history that our poles, North and South Pole, reversed. But there's a period of time during the reversal when the magnetic field becomes very weak, and between the time that it strengthens and the new alignment, the ill effects of the sun's carcinogenic rays just are devastating on animals, such as people, and so we should be very concerned about that. But the other is that there's literally a growing continent of human rubbish floating in the ocean, and it's a continent size of rubbish.
Isn't it logical to assume that when we built stuff here, and Asia built stuff there, and then they ship things, now they ship trillions of dollars worth of stuff back and forth in the, I mean...
No, there's not trillions of dollars shipped back and forth. The Chinese ship billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars into America.
So
we send them the cardboard back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The gas that pumps into there, the fuel, the diesel, the garbage, the sewage from the ships, and on and on and on and on.
Oh yeah. Yep, and then the just the general noise pollution of all that, and the effect that it's had. And then you look at the nation's oceans, where I'm not a proponent of anthropomorphic global warming. I think that the Earth is absolutely warming, but it's part of a trend that has where the cycles are 700 years, 350-ish, in fact, even to 600 years, even 700 years on the warming phase, and an equal amount of time on the cooling phase. And it's been a cycle that the Earth has endured now for millions of years.
By the way.
Well, of course they do. I mean, it's 100% of the research agrees with that. That is the reality, is that the Earth has gone through warming and cooling periods, and we can even see the effects because these periods are 600 to 700 years long at their longest, 300 years at their shortest, and we can even see the effects on recorded history and what it does to society. But there is one aspect of our pumping carbon into the atmosphere, and that is that we are acidifying our oceans. And we have places like the Great Barrier Reef where entire ecosystems have died. So I mean, we've got a mess of things, and and then there's just the deterioration of our planet as a whole. There's an increase in tornadic activity, and increase in hurricanes, and increase in magnitude and frequency of large earthquakes. And if that weren't bad enough, that our government is really busy building unimaginably hellish weapons. And we, I shouldn't say we because I'm not a patriotic American, but patriotic Americans are just zealous over these weapons. And it's everything from laser guns to nuclear-tipped projectiles to rail guns, and they have microwave devices which they have now deployed in battlefield conditions that melt people, turn them to goo. I mean, we really have some sinister things.
Not just when they're designing these things and over at Grumman or someplace, and they don't just say, "My God,
what the hell am I doing?" I think what we've done though is we've literally drummed the ability to think out of people.
And
so they have no judgment anymore, so they don't care. It's a getting paid to develop things that kill gazillions, and they're actually indoctrinated into believing that they're doing something good because it'll keep America safe. Safe from whom?
Hopefully from that government.
Who do they think we're keeping us safe from?
Obviously not us. We need to be safe from us.
There is some apocalyptic prophecy that talk about things that, there's the side of a mountain, Carniviego, that is one of the Canary Islands that's going to fracture on a fault line in the volcanic mountain. The island, one side of it's going to fall into the sea, is going to create an enormous tsunami. And I was very specific about the mountain and the ill effects of it. And he's very precise about Apophis, MN 2004, and when it's going to hit, where it's going to hit, and the kind of damage it's going to do. And he talks about the aftermath of the Magog War, which is the all-Islamic assault on Israel, where the allies on both sides, China and Russia on one side, the United States and Europe on the other, engage and render a third of the Earth's surface uninhabitable. So there's a lot of stuff that is that's going to happen over the this next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't kidding when he said if I come back one day late, ain't gonna be nothing here.
Yeah, that's really what he said. Yeah, his timing. Well, his timing is precisely his timing, which is that he's going to return on Yom Kippurim for the specific purpose of reconciling his relationship with Yehuda and Israel, and he is really, yeah, right. And he is going to take all things Roman Catholic, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, and secular humanism, all things religious, all things political. He's going to pulverize them, and then he's going to thrust them into caves of molten lava that are going to seal these things out of sight for the 1,000 years that the Earth will continue to exist after his return. So it's a really interesting period, but oh my, are we going to make a mess of things between now and then?
Right.
It is frightening how we have gotten into this pickle, and how you listen to the politicians and they're all beating each other up for over the Islamic State, and not a single politician say, listen, we only have the Islamic State because we invaded Iraq and gave it to Iran. Otherwise, there would be no such thing as the Islamic State. And that we have a mess in Libya because we bombed the bejesus out of the place. And that that the world's most corrupt government is Afghanistan because it's the puppet government of America in that place. And that, you know, we've caused more than 1 million refugees to flee Syria because of the fact that we made it uninhabitable by starting the war there and then arming both sides. But through it all, the rhetoric for everybody involved is, well, the solution to this is a bigger and stronger military and more bombs.
Yeah, sure.
And, you know, they're encouraging doing more of the very thing that caused the problem. And there isn't 1% of Americans or Europeans that say, hey, hell no. No, you caused the problem that way. Stop the insanity. You know, if bombing got you into this mess, why in the hell do you think that more bombing is going to get you out of it?
You know, most of the weapons that come from us go to Saudi Arabia, right?
Well, Saudi Arabia is a lot of them, but most of the weapons that are being wielded by the run-of-the-mill jihadists in Libya and in Syria and in western Iraq come by way of Qatar.
Yeah. So the solution would seem like, or at least a big part of the solution would seem like, you know, get rid of, don't sell them to them. But we're so tied in with oil and all the deals and the petrol dollar and the, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a really...
They can't do it.
Right. Simple answer.
They wouldn't be willing to take that far.
Yeah, simple answer to Islamic terrorism. Quarantine it. Treat Islamic terrorism like the menace it is and quarantine it. I mean, if you were to quarantine it, it's over. They might kill each other with sticks and stones, but you know, there is nothing we can do or should care about them killing one another. There's nothing you can do about it, so why even bother? But if we were to quarantine them and to say, here's the deal. Because Islam is responsible for 99.9% of the world's terrorist attacks, what we're going to do henceforth is we're not going to fund or fuel Islamic terrorism by buying oil from Islamic countries. So there will be absolutely no oil purchases of any kind from any Islamic country. So there's no funding.
Yeah.
Second, we are not going to provide weapons to any Islamic country. So you don't supply them with weapons. You don't fund them by buying petrodollars from OPEC. And you quarantine them by saying, you know, you're there, you stay there. You know, you created this god-awful religion. You live with it. That's your choice, and you deal with it. And if we did that, there would be no...
You'd dry up pretty quick.
Yeah, no Islamic terrorism. You know, and if you combine that with simply stating the truth about the religion. You know, like Trump saying we're going to put a temporary ban on Muslims coming to the country. Unless you can finish the thought and say, because they are responsible for 99.9% of the world's terrorist acts, and as President of the United States, our first priority is to protect the American people. So since Muslims are responsible for 99.9% of the terrorist act, we can't allow more Muslims to come into the country. So, I mean, it's just really simple.
Yeah.
But you've got to finish the statement. And you can even go one step further. Say, there's a reason that Muslims perpetrate 99.9% of the world's terrorist acts. And that's because Muhammad was a terrorist, and the Quran orders Muslims to follow his example.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
Now, why was it on the news the other day, they actually showed a blurb where they were talking about Thomas Jefferson, and I think Adams went with him to London to meet with the Turkish ambassador or whatever you want to call him. And that's when he picked up his thing, and they said, why are you doing it? And they explained why he did it. He says, because my Quran says I do all these things.
Yeah, the Quran and Hadith, my prophet.
That didn't ring a bell with anybody?
Yeah, Jefferson understood. The reason Jefferson had a copy of the Quran is that he went to this meeting, and the fact he then took what was at the time about 25% of the federal budget and used it to pay a bribe to the Ottoman Empire to preclude the Ottoman Empire from continuing to pirate its ships and crews. And he wanted to read. Could it be true? I mean, he knew that Paul. In fact, he wrote to a friend, that Paul was an absolute fraud, and that he was the first to corrupt Yosha's message. But then he was confronted with Islam, and the ambassador saying, "Yeah, we robbed your ship. We commit acts of piracy because that's what our prophet told us to do." And they cited the Hadith and cited the Quran. And so, you would have thought that we would have, recognized what was going on. And someone as stupid as Obama, when he says, America has never been at war with Islam, did you think somebody in the media would have read the history of Thomas Jefferson and said, excuse me, but that's not true? Do you think somebody having sung the battle hymn the military anthem of the Marines would say, anyway, it says from the shores of Tripoli. Why in the hell is it talking about the shores of Tripoli if we haven't been at war with Muslims?
If it wasn't so sad, it'd just be so funny.
It would be funny if it wasn't so sad. It would be funny. But just people have absolutely lost their minds. We have dumb society down to the point that people have lost the ability to think.
I had a lady I was talking to yesterday, and she's very open-minded, and she didn't trust anything, and I thought that was pretty good. And we were talking, and we got talking about the petrodollar, and she wanted to know why we're so in love with Saudi Arabia, and I told her some history of what happened at the end of World War II, and so forth and so on. And I said, have you ever read the Quran or any excerpts from it or any books on it or anything? And she said, no. So I gave her the thing for Prophet of Doom.
Prophetofdoom.net.
Now, she'll find it though that way. And that's
if you just Google Prophet of Doom, it'll take you to it. Yeah.
So you don't have to connect a lot of dots.
No. I mean, one does not have to read Prophet of Doom, which takes the Quran and reorders it chronologically, setting it into the context of Muhammad's life, using the only two chronological presentations of Hadith, which are all reports from Muhammad and his companions, that were composed within 200 years of Muhammad's death. And by taking the Quran, reordering it chronologically, and setting it into the context of Muhammad's life, it becomes eminently understandable and absolutely perverted and despicable and militant and just every derogatory term you could throw at it. So, right, but even if you weren't to, that's right, there's no way to insult. And how do you insult a pedophile? How do you insult, a man that actually said that he had God's blessing to be a pedophile? How do you insult a man that bragged about being a rapist? How do you insult a man that bragged about being a mass murderer and a thief and a sadist and who admitted to being demon-possessed? I mean, I don't know how you would insult such a person. But nonetheless, even if you did not go through the effort to even read Prophet of Doom, all you have to do is open your eyes. I mean, look at the Islamic countries. Look what Muslims are doing to one another. I mean, what religion, other than Islam, has mutilated the genitals of 200 million little girls? What religion, other than Islam, has expressed divine sanction for kidnapping tens of thousands of little girls and turning them into sex slaves? I mean, good grief. What religion's signature act is terrorism, where armed goons attack defenseless civilians? You know, there was a suicide bombing, of course, this week in Baghdad. It's always the same. The people who perpetrate this crime always attack soft targets, just like Muhammad did. Muhammad never once went up against an army. He never went up against even a militia. He only attacked civilians. I mean, good grief.
When you have church and state together and they produce a country, let's exclude the oil rich ones that have nicer buildings but nothing else, and it produces that, why would you endorse it? Why would you defend it?
Yeah, why would you? Yeah, why would you pretend somehow that Saudi Arabia was an ally? You know, there was an article that came out about 2 weeks ago. There's a bill that's been marshaled by a number of Republicans that has been proposed by the victims' families of 9/11. And, of course, they want to be compensated for the loss of their loved ones. And they recognize that those who perpetrated the crime were mostly Saudi Arabians, and that since they're dead and that their families are all in Islamic countries, there is no way you're going to get any blood out of that turnip. But since the obvious source of their indoctrination was Saudi Arabia, and since the Bush administration went to such great lengths to black out the entire section on Saudi Arabia of the 9/11 report, both in the Pentagon's version and in the Commission's version.
And they all got them out of town, too.
The congressional bill, if approved, would actually make Saudi Arabia, their embassies in America and their holdings in America, subject to lawsuit. And so the Saudi Crown Prince came out and said, well, you know, if you're going to do that, then we will withdraw all investments in America. We'll sell all T-bills. We'll remove all of our money from your banks. We will divest ourselves of all American holdings. And what he did not say is if we were to do that, America, you will go into a depression. But that's the reality of it. And so the only reason that we don't hold Saudi Arabia liable for what happened in 9/11 is because if we were to do so, they would bankrupt us.
And the Chinese can do the same thing.
Yeah, but the difference is with the Chinese, the Chinese aren't attacking us.
They sell stuff back to us.
Yeah, the Chinese, the only reason that the Chinese own such a disproportionate amount of America is because when you have an overwhelmingly negative balance of trade, there is no other option. You know, the Chinese are selling us manufactured goods, and we're sending them back. The cardboard boxes collapsed that they sent these goods in. There is an enormous deficit of trade. And so what do you do with those dollars? You know, dollars aren't really good for, you can't build an airplane out of them. You can't, you know, they're a lousy source of firewood. I mean, you can't even roast marshmallows with them. And so what are they going to do with them? And really the only answer to that question is that they can, right, and so they buy America. They really buy American companies. They buy American harbors. They buy American plants. They buy, you know, they do everything except buy T-bills. No one wants those anymore.
Well, you know, that's why the British Empire went into the dope dealing business. You know, the exports of and the imports of tea
right.
to China was so great that they didn't have anything to sell back.
Mm-hmm.
So they went into they had India, and they started producing India and Burma. They started producing all the heroin, and you know about the Boxer Rebellion and all that. So
yeah,
you know, it's pretty standard history. They tried to get as many of them on dope as they could, and then they had and then they could trade.
Yeah.
We just
well, it's kind of like our invasion of Afghanistan. I mean, it was following our invasion, it is now the source of about 90% of the world's heroin. Congratulations, America. You should be so proud. Welcome back to Observations. Before we start in our second segment here, there was an auction. In fact, I understand the auction is still ongoing, Kirk and Scott. You still can bid on the gun that was used by Zimmerman to kill Trayvon Martin. I understand the current high bid for this is for a pistol is some $60 million.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're having an auction online to sell the gun that was used to kill Trayvon Martin. And there's somebody out there has driven the price up to over $60 million.
Why would
now,
you?
I wouldn't want that gun. Listen, Trayvon Martin brought on his own death, and Zimmerman's a scumbag. There isn't a good side in that argument. There are just two really, really terrible people. One of which is dead. The other one, which is just taking up space on the earth and is walking dead. But to want to have a weapon in your possession that took a life, why would you want that? It's like you go to the Smithsonian and you see proudly displayed the Enola Gay. What, 50 million people died as a result of the weapon it dropped? I don't want to be anywhere near it. So it's amazing what people will spend their money on. We haven't had a single dollar invested in any of the websites that present Yahowah's testimony. And yet there's some numbskull out there that's willing to spend 60 million bones?
I want to know how he got his money to begin with. Like if you just have 60 million and you're like, yep, I need that gun. like you can buy a brand new gun that's never been shot by anybody other than yourself.
Yeah, for anywhere from $25 to $125.
For much less. You could even buy all the utensils that you need to build your own gun for less than 60 million. You could buy the machine. You could buy, you could probably hire a guy to design a gun for you.
Oh, it's a huge percentage of guns now that are being made by the 3D printers.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
You can for $10,000 or so, you can buy a 3D printer. The programs are available free online, and you can go and print your own gun. Now, what good it's going to do you? When as Yahweh says, a third of the earth is going to be uninhabitable as a result of a nuclear holocaust between the superpowers. What good is the gun going to do you? What good is a gun in the midst of an earthquake or a hurricane or a tornado?
You run in the house, what are you going to say? That one?
Is it going to find you water?
Yeah.
Does it because it cook meals for you? I mean, there's so much other stuff that you should worry about.
No, personally, I don't get it. We have reached the point in the 5th chapter of Observations for a Time where Yahowah specifically said that all of these horrible things that he had been exposing in reference to a lone individual man leading the parade of ignorant and irrational people to the whore's house, and this would be the whore of Babylon, that individual, well, what he said of him, it is the way, the Derek of Shaul. It is the way of Shaul. It's Paul of the Christian New Testament, descending into the impending, the doom, surrounding the lightless inner rooms of the whore's house and of the plague of death. Now, there's two different things listed here. Those like Paul who perpetrated the whore's most popular religion, Christianity, he's going to find himself in the lightless rooms of in Satan's home, known popularly as hell in Yahweh's parlance, Sheol. And there are those that have been duped by him, the billions of Christians in the world today. They're going to find themselves plagued by death. They're going to die. That's why there's two different things listed here. But both are the way of Shaul. You know, we've made our way all the way through Proverbs 6 and 7. And all the way through, there has been only one person in all of human history that meets the criterion for this horrible person that God is specifically saying that he hates, and he views what he created as an abomination, and whom he associates with the whore of Babylon. And at the end of the 7th Marshal proverb, he says, and oh, by the way, his name is Shaul, the Christian Paul.
And hard to hide from that.
It is pretty hard to hide from that. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to conclude our review of Proverbs 6 and 7 with a review of the most, I think, telling prophecy, most specifically revealing prophecy in the whole of Yahweh's Torah and prophets. And that would be Chabauk in the 1st and 2nd chapters. Now, regarding Shaul, the most infamous and influential man in human history, Yahweh offered a haunting prediction. How many years do you think that Chabauk wrote in advance of Paul's first letter? That would be to the Galatians.
Well, I actually know, but so you go ahead and tell them.
666 years.
A special number, huh?
It is.
Man, man, man.
Man, man, man. Yeah, I Paul say, yes, I Paul say, but I Paul say, 666 years. Prior to Paul's penning his first letter, Galatians, which was written by the devil's advocate, circa 52 CE. In his opening statement, Chabauk, the prophet appointed by Yahweh for this mission, revealed the following. Towards you, and this is Yahweh, there are cruel lies and a great injustice, a proliferation of errors which lead to death and destruction. So you must continually withhold salvation.
Wow. Think of that.
Think of that. First of all, think of that God is saying that there are cruel lies and a great injustice, a proliferation of errors regarding him. Now think of that for a moment. Now the only group of people that proliferate a great injustice and errors regarding God are the religious. So he's saying that the religious are perpetrating cruel lies and a great injustice as a result of a proliferation of errors. And he's saying the consequence of all this is not a victimless crime. It leads to death and destruction. So you must continually withhold salvation. That's a line that Yahweh affirms in the Proverbs and then again and through the prophets, which is that he cannot save the religious.
Yeah. And he's insisting that he does it, which is would be odd for a Christian to think of. Because they think he's going to save everybody.
Yeah. Well, certainly save the religious. That's what he's saying. That's what Christians believe. They're going to save the religious. What God is saying is exactly the opposite. Mm-hmm. I have to withhold salvation. He can't save the religious. He cannot save the religious. And that's really stunning when you realize that that's what's being said here, is that you must withhold salvation because of religion. Now, can God save a person who commits adultery?
Absolutely.
Can God save a person who commits an act of homosexuality?
There's nothing you can do that he couldn't save you from once you turn away.
Except there are a list of things that you can do that he cannot save you from. But behaviors like killing, you can kill and still be saved, right? Dode did. You can lie and still be saved. Dode did. You can commit adultery and still be saved. Boy, Dode was a professional in the adultery business. Promiscuity is the big thing that Christians say. Oh, the wages of sin is death. That big fixation with promiscuity. Dode, who God says is perfect. I mean, you couldn't be more promiscuous than Dode. I don't think Dode even knew the names of half the women in his harem. I mean, it's unbelievably promiscuous. He says God can save you from that. What God can't save you from, though, is negating the importance of his name.
Yes, correct.
And he can't save you from religion.
And we know that because in the 10 statements, the first stone, he says these 3 things.
Right.
I can't forgive. I won't forgive.
Yeah. I can't forgive. Won't forgive. So toward you, Yahowah, there are cruel lies and a great injustice, a proliferation of errors, which lead to death and destruction. So you must constantly, continuously withhold salvation. Lies and injustice are conspicuous to me, and they are related. So he, which you will soon identify as Shaul, has been and continues to be contentious, taunting and quarrelsome, insulting in his dispute, harboring hostile opposition while presenting an entirely different perception regarding the proper standard, ultimately putting in man in conflict with God. And so he brings forward, advocates, and promotes strife and dissension, even argumentative objections with regard to vindication.
That's right out of the book of Acts.
Yeah, and Galatians and Romans.
Galatians and the whole bit.
Yeah, the whole bit. I mean, that's the thing that is so revealing to me, so astonishing in a way to me, regarding Pauline Christianity, is that its basic premise is preposterous. Paul taunts God. He calls his old system, which became known as the Old Testament, pornography, poneros in Greek. He says that God's impotent and he cannot save based upon his Torah. He says that his Torah enslaves. He claimed to speak for the very God that he insulted and demeaned, which is what this is saying. What are the odds that God, A, is in fact incompetent and impotent, and then found this buffoon and decided that, I'm going to inspire him to contradict everything that I have said and to come up with an entirely different plan. Oh, by the way, the plan that he comes up with will be his own.
Well, even if that were so, if you could buy that, when did God become competent again then?
Well, yes, what I said, but that's the whole thing about that. First, he says that his inspiration came from God. So how did this God who was incompetent become competent? But think about Paul's letters. Paul's letters are, "But I say." So what that means is to believe Christianity, you'd have to believe that God was incapable of creating a plan that could save anyone. God was incapable of doing what he intended. So he gave up. And he appointed Paul to come up with a plan that was entirely different, that contradicted his own, and that the Pauline plan is somehow going to prevail when God's failed. I mean, it's so preposterous to be a Christian. You wonder why there is one Christian on the planet, much less 2.5 billion of them. And as the prophet is saying, the injustice and is conspicuous. The lies are conspicuous. I mean, you read Paul's letters, and they're filled with contradictions. He claims to be insane. He claims to be demon-possessed. He claims to be murderous. He claims to be a sexual pervert. He claims to be inspired by the God that he contradicts. I mean, you don't have to be. a genius.
No.
The lies are conspicuous. And he's in a quarrelsome and an insulting dispute with God himself.
So why do you think no one ever challenges this? I know you do, we do.
Yeah. What, but 1 in a million people do?
Why does no one look at that and say, hey, even as I do more and more translation, I keep saying, well, wait a minute, that's not what it says here, and all the lexicons agree that this is what it means, and that is what he said. Why does no one challenge that? I mean, it may be a rhetorical question. I mean, I guess I'm perplexed.
Well, I think the sixth proverb, Bashal, explained that, which is that the vast preponderance of people are apathetic.
Yeah.
Their eyes are closed. Their minds are closed. They make pledges of allegiance to just go along, and they never bother to think it through. And because you do have to step back, gain a little perspective, and actually think it through to recognize how preposterous all this is. But most people just don't bother. They just go along. And you know, the religious have made it extraordinarily difficult to oppose them, just like the politically correct have made it extraordinarily painful. You know, if you're going to do something that's not politically correct, they're going to publicly crucify you. Yeah. You know, and if you speak out against Muhammad, the Quran, or Islam in an Islamic country, they're going to torture you and then kill you. You know, when the Catholic Church had supreme power and you challenged anything regarding them, no matter how perverted they were,
torture, burn at the stake.
Exactly right. They torture you first, kill you second. It's yeah, they make it difficult, right?
I'm just stunned, like everybody else that reads it the first time. I continue to be, wow.
Yeah. So likewise, this is now Chabauk 1:4. So likewise, therefore, he has incapacitated and paralyzed the purpose of the Torah. He failed to uplift and to convey the glorious internal and eternal approach to vindication, whereby disputes are justly resolved. For indeed, wickedness encompasses and guilt abounds, hemming in the hopeful, in opposition to the righteous and innocent. Therefore, in this manner, his judgment regarding his own ongoing means to vindication is perverted, distorted, twisted, and false. Now, there's only one person in all of human history that specifically sought to incapacitate the purpose of the Torah, and then to replace it with his own plan of salvation. Only one.
Correct.
You know, you look at the villains throughout time, and you know, God's list of villains would only include those who had an influence either on Israel or the chosen people. And so you're going to be limited there. You know, Julius Caesar may have been a scallywag. Yeah, Alexander the Great was an egotistic maniac, but they didn't have any influence on Israel or the chosen people, so they'd be excluded from the list. But they wouldn't be included anyway because they had nothing to say about the Torah. I mean, Hadrian was a real scumbag, but he didn't incapacitate the Torah. He didn't seek to do that.
He's just a conqueror.
Yeah, I mean, he burned every copy he could find, but trying to incapacitate and paralyze his purpose, no, he was clueless to what the Torah even said. And, you know, Rabbi Akiba had very little to say about the Torah. His commentary was on the Talmud. Maimonides, the Rambam, you know, the one that codified the principles of rabbinic Judaism, in his books, the Mishnah Torah was not on the Torah, but on the Talmud. You know, Muhammad didn't know enough about the Torah even to be dangerous. His corruptions, too, were of the Babylonian Talmud. Huge sections of the Quran are citations from the Babylonian Talmud. They aren't from the Torah. So, if you're looking for who he's talking about, there's only one person that specifically sought to annul the Torah, and that is the fulcrum upon which Paul's letters pivot. It's the Torah. So he incapacitated and paralyzed the purpose of the Torah. You know, what he said was essentially, and in fact, the first comment he makes about the Torah is that the Torah cannot save. What's the purpose of the Torah?
The purpose is to save. That's where the mitzvah is. That's where the instructions for the Moed Mikra are.
Yeah. Does the Torah say, you know, since Dode violated one of the Torah's instructions, he cannot be saved?
That's absurd.
Yeah,
you couldn't count them. He said, "On my hairs on my head."
Right. Correct. So the Torah does not exist to exonerate the perfect.
No, it's for flawed people like me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It exists to perfect and to immortalize and to adopt and to enrich and empower flawed people like you and me. Even people as flawed as Scott.
Well, even them too, yeah. I didn't think about that, but absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that is the purpose of it. So, likewise and therefore, if you were a Christian, the purpose of the Torah, which is to, you know, and I want to be a little bit careful here.
Okay.
The primary purpose of the Torah is not to save us.
No, it's to find our way home. So.
Yeah, it's to provide the way home. It is to provide the way home. It is to provide a means of extricating ourselves from the foibles of man and to unite ourselves with the benefits of being part of Yahweh's family. And so it is to immortalize us, to perfect us, to enrich us, to empower us, to adopt us. That's the purpose of the Torah. It's to enumerate and to present the conditions for participating in the covenant and the benefits of making that choice. To introduce us to Yahowah so that we get to know him, and to explain the choices that we can make that are most beneficial and the choices that we can make that are most detrimental. Salvation is a byproduct of those things. But since Pauline Christianity, specifically in his first letter, says that the covenant memorialized on Mount Sinai, which would be the one and only covenant of Yahowah, the one with Abraham, Ishak, and Jacob, with Yisrael, and thus with us, same one that he had with Noah. Right. That the covenant that was memorialized on Mount Sinai, which would be the Torah's covenant, was with Hagar and enslaved.
Which is impossible.
He in effect incapacitate and paralyze the primary purpose of the Torah, which is to introduce us to the covenant and to Yahowah and empower us with the information we need to participate in one to meet the other. That's what it did. And it couldn't be more clear, since he has specifically said that it incapacitated and paralyzed the purpose of the Torah.
Right.
And he said he failed to uplift and to convey the glorious and eternal approach to vindication. Well, the approach to vindication is the 7 Moed Mikra.
Right, and we're celebrating Shabuah today.
Right.
Because of how we did the early one. So,
yeah.
How would I know about that if I couldn't get to the Torah?
Correct. Yeah, how would you know? You wouldn't. So he negated its purpose.
Chance to sit down and talk with Yahweh. Thank you.
Yeah, according to Yahweh, there's only one way to vindication. Is the 7-step plan that he not only articulated, but that he enabled. You know, when you associate Yosha with the cross, and to say that the cross is the source of life, as opposed to associating Yosha with the Passover lamb and realizing that the Passover lamb is the source of life, you paralyze the purpose of the Torah. And so he's saying that Paul's statements are perverted, distorted, twisted, and false. And this goes on to talk about his audience. Who did Paul claim he had 100% exclusive on from God himself?
The Goyim.
Yeah.
The Gentiles.
Yeah, witnesses among the Gentiles, those who are actually observant and thoughtful, are astonished and astounded, amazed and surprised that indeed a work will be and now has been done in your days that you will not find credible, even when it is written down and he is held accountable. He's speaking about us.
Yeah, we're grappling with it, and we're just stunned.
Right, stunned. I mean, I'm absolutely astonished and astounded, amazed and surprised that indeed that a work that was done by Paul has been found by anyone to be credible. Or that, and when people hear it, they don't even understand how it is that Paul could be accountable in this way. Then it says, this is the seventh statement, 6th and 7th. Rather, look to me, paying attention to me. This is Yahowah speaking in first person. Standing upright, established and restored against Chaldea. What is Chaldea a synonym for?
Babylon.
Babylon.
The schemes of Babylon.
Correct. Corrupting and confusing nature of Babylon. Restored against Babylon. You know, when Yosha is cited at the end of Revelation as saying, "Come out of her, my people," what's the context of that?
It's Babylon.
It's Babylon. When he says at the end, just before his return, Babylon has fallen.
Yeah, same thing.
Doesn't that mean that Babylon exists as a major influence? In fact, it is the major it's the single most pervasive counter option, the negative influence in the world at the time of Yosha's return. So this nation that was destroyed by the Persians, the Median Persians, millennia ago,
yeah,
what it wrought on the world is so pervasive that God's declaration before his return is that it finally has fallen.
Yeah.
So what is Babylon if it is the most pervasive counter-influence against Yosha?
What it is, political and economic and religious.
Yeah, and most specifically, Christianity.
Yeah, oh, Christianity, of course, yeah.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, in the discussion of Babylon and the horror of Babylon, Yosha in the Revelation walks us right through it. I mean, he talks about the emperors in Babylon, so that you would, which were the Romans.
Right.
Of this beast that became the whore of Babylon. He talked about the Roman emperors. He talked about the city on 7 hills, which is Rome. He talks about its effect of growing out of, in Daniel, of growing out of the Roman Empire, even in Revelation, growing out of the Roman Empire, which the Roman Catholic Church did.
Right.
You know, the Roman Catholic Church is Christianity.
Yeah.
So that is the...
yeah, I like your phrase you always like to use, but Protestantism is just Catholicism light.
Yeah.
Because there's only a few little wrinkles that are not so...
That is correct.
You know, not in sync completely.
Yeah. Same perverted New Testament.
Yeah.
Same false name for God.
Go to the cross.
Same cross. Same negation of Yahweh's name. Same fixation on a non-existent, non-godly church. Still the fixation on the cross, Sunday worship, Christmas, Easter, the Trinity, all that stuff. No, it's not even a very light version of Christianity. It still has almost all of the negative calories. So the witnesses among the Gentiles. Rather look to me, God says, paying attention to me, standing upright, established, restored against Chaldea, synonym for Babylon. Where did Yahowah ask Abraham to leave?
Babylon.
Yeah, Ur of the Chaldeans, right? Which is Babylon. The country of heathens and pagans that is detestable and poisonous, impetuous and senseless. He makes his way to the vast expanses of the world as if an inheritance, taking possession of inhabited places that are not his. Terrible, dreadful, and intimidating. This from his decision, the lofty status he sought, and the plan he advances and spreads. You know, the people who tried to annul the Torah and who spoke in this way only one is known for his journeys through the known world. That's Paul.
Yes, every map in the table. They have them all. This is his journeys.